Hello everyone, in this video I'll be ranking the Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree bosses by their difficulty on this tier list. So some of these bosses are extremely challenging and some of them aren't as bad. So I'll be talking about it, ranking them from S to F tier, and the first one we got is Metyr, Mother of Fingers. Now this boss has some annoying attacks, like the fingers from the side can kind of hit you when you're getting some hits off. It might be focusing on your mimic, but it can also hit you, so it does have some frustrating attacks. But of all the bosses, it's not the worst boss, but it's also not the easiest. Metyr Mother of Fingers has some like decently telegraphed attacks, but it also has those ones from the side which are frustrating to deal with. I want to put Metyr in the B tier. I don't think it's that difficult. If you bring fire damage like the Blasphemous Blade, it can make this fight a whole lot easier, so I'd recommend doing that if you're struggling. Next, we got Commander Gaius, and I hate Commander Gaius. All my homies hate Commander Gaius. This boss is terrible. I'm going to put him in the S tier. The reason that this one is so difficult, they did fix it, so there's a patch, and I'm going to fight him again here soon and see how it is after the patch, but he used to just bum rush you right at the start and hit you, so the only way that you could summon in your Mimic was you'd have to run into the arena, run around, and get him stuck on a wall. There's a little ledge that you can kind of cheese him off of, so you can just run around there, apply your buffs or whatever, get your Mimic into the battle, and you'll avoid that first attack that he does. However, that's only one of his million attacks that he'll do. What makes Commander Gaius so rough, though, is his hitboxes. They don't match up very well at all. So he'll come rushing at you on his boar there, and you can dodge roll what seemingly feels like perfect, but then his hitbox is so jank. Like, there's a fart cloud that rolls behind him. That'll hit you somehow, and it deals a ton of damage. So I've had so many attempts fighting this boss where I just died because I got hit by an invisible fart cloud, and it's just extremely annoying. He does have some very frustrating attacks too, where he like does the gravity twist and can kind of hit you from wherever you're at. But as long as you're aware of the second phase change, it makes it a little bit easier. But still, I think that Commander Gaius is probably the most difficult boss in the DLC, barring like the final boss. Might even be a little bit, I found him more challenging than Messmer, but it's entirely dependent on your build. The best weapons to use are fire weapons, and the Blasphemous Blade in particular did really well against him because it also has the innate healing, which will keep your health up high and deal a decent bit of damage to him. So Scarlet Rod and Blasphemous Blade works well against Commander Gaius, but he's still a big pain in the butt. Next, we got the Scadutree Avatar. I originally thought it was Scadutree, but Scadu is the Old English pronunciation of Shadow. So Scadutree Avatar, I personally don't think it's that hard. This is the only boss that I one-shot. My first attempt, rolled in. I had the Blasphemous Blade, which probably made it a little bit easier, but who would have think it? A big burnt sunflower is weak to fire. So I would put it in the C tier. It has 3 phases. Now, I did hear that on subsequent fights, it's hard because it's going to hit you with the Impenetrable Thorns attack, which stacks up bleed really quickly. But if you're struggling with the Scadutree Avatar, bring out the Blasphemous Blade because that healing will help a lot, but it's also extremely weak to fire damage. I didn't even have that many Scadutree blessings when I fought this, and I was able to slap it down pretty quickly. But with any of these bosses, if you're struggling, get more Scadutree blessings, and it'll make it a whole lot easier. It's almost the equivalent of getting a flask in the base game, so you know how beneficial those are your first playthrough. I would say the Scadutree Avatar is probably C tier, maybe B tier. Some people got upset with me that I said this boss isn't that difficult, but try it one time with the Blasphemous Blade and you'll probably take it down. As long as you have fire weapons, it makes this one a whole lot easier. Next, we have the Putrescent Knight. This one is a little bit more challenging, but also I thought to be quite a fun fight. It has this 8-hit combo that it'll do where it's like rolling towards you, and then the horse comes out of water, comes at you, and then he rolls back at you. I thought the combos in this fight were really fun. Now, I guess the biggest part to focus on with the Putrescent Knight is whenever it goes into the second phase and it does the fire attacks, don't dodge roll through them. It's actually best to jump over them. So I want to put Putrescent Knight in the A tier. It's pretty challenging because the combos are so long. However, bringing Scarlet Rot makes this boss a whole lot easier. It doesn't, so some bosses, if you apply Scarlet Rot and they switch phases into phase 2, the Scarlet Rot comes off them. With the Putrescent Knight, it doesn't. So you can Scarlet Rot it. You can use Scarlet Rot pots or even the hefty throwing pots and deal Scarlet Rot damage, making this fight a whole lot easier. I'm going to put it in the A tier just because it does have some combos that may be a little bit challenging. And yeah, it also deals frostbite damage, which is kind of annoying to deal with. Next, we have Rellana, Twin Moon Knight. So this one is pretty challenging as well, actually, because it's one that you're going to fight early on. So if you don't have enough Scadutree blessings, this one's going to be pretty challenging. What's hard about it is it has two phase changes, I guess. So when it goes into phase 2, it does a carry and slicer, so it'll attack down and it'll attack all the way around 360 degrees. And you have to dodge roll through those pretty perfectly. So Bloodhound Step can help out a lot with this fight. I really like this fight personally. I think that Rellana, much better than Rellana, but also at the same time, like for a swords person, this was a good fight. So I'm gonna put it in the A tier. Mainly due to it being one of the earliest fights that you'll be encountering. It's easier than the Divine Beast Dancing Lion, which I'll focus on next. The Divine Beast is not too challenging, but Rellana, especially for some like people that don't have a lot of Scadutree blessings, can be a big thorn in their side. Also, the Twin Moon attack, when it drops the moon, and then it drops down, you have to jump 3 times. And the timing on that can, if you mess it up, you're dead. So, yeah, A tier. Next we have Divine Beast Dancing Lion, Bellarat. There's a second version of this fight, pretty fun to know. The Divine Beast, it has, like, I guess 3 kind of phases. It goes from, like, just the basic phase to the lightning phase and then to the ice and wind phase. I would say it's probably a B to C tier. Like, it's not the most challenging fight. There's also a Death Blight version of this, which is pretty cool. It's a decently challenging fight. In the first fight of the DLC, you do get Freya to help as a summon there, so that can help with the aggro spreading. I would say it's a little bit easier than the Metyr Mother of Fingers. Like, once you get this boss's attack patterns down, it's not too challenging, but at first it can be a bit daunting. But get your Scadutree blessings. It'll make it a whole lot easier. Next we have Midra, Lord of the Frenzied Flame. I'm actually going to put this one at the top of the A tier. Midra is a pretty challenging fight. You want to really be focusing on bleed damage against this boss, and also Frostbite does a pretty good job too, so those two are kind of my tips and tricks for that fight. The thing with Midra is it can close the gap between you really fast, so if you're standing there, it can like do an attack and get right on you really quickly. Spreading the aggro between you and your Mimic is tricky too, because it'll do attacks where the Frenzy Flame shoots out and hits both of you. It's a really fun fight though. I kind of wish it was an S tier. Like, I wish it was a little bit harder, because it's just such a spectacle fight, and it's the Lord of the Frenzied Flame. Like, I feel like this one should have been a tiny bit more challenging, even though it is pretty hard. I'd say it's harder than the Putrescent Knight. It also depends where in the game you fight this at. Like, this was one of the first bosses I went after. I don't know how. I just found that secret area in the Shadow Keep, and I made my way down there, and I was like, oh, cool. I want to go find this one. So, yeah, I fought this one pretty early on. It might be a little easier in subsequent playthroughs, too. I'm working my way through a playthrough right now, and I'm going to make it there and see how it is. But, yeah, Midra's a pretty tough fight. Still really fun. Next, we have Romina, Saint of the Bud. This is another one that I wish was a little bit more challenging. I don't know if it's weak to fire damage, but I actually fought... So my order of fighting these bosses, I went Divine Beast, Rellana, Romina. I don't know why, but even still, I would only say it's probably B tier. It took me a few attempts to get, but there's only 3 bosses I fought with the Blasphemous Blade: Romina, Metyr, and Scadutree Avatar, and she went down really quickly to the Blasphemous Blade. I don't know if it's a weakness or if it just got lucky, but the innate healing from that sword can help with the Scarlet Rot that you get from this. So Romina, not the most challenging, but the rolling around attack reminds me of the Godskin Noble, which is an annoying attack to deal with, and yeah, I want to put it in the B tier. Next, we got Messmer the Impaler. This is a fun fight. I love the Messmer fight. Now, on my first playthrough, it took about 10-15 attempts. On my second playthrough, it took me the same amount. Messmer's a really fun fight, though. I want to put him up in the S tier. Not as hard as Commander Gaius, I don't think. But Messmer has some attacks that are kind of tricky to watch the telegraphing on, because he'll do like a stab, 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 jump up, throw the thing down, and then spike shoot up. Now, I did attempt this a second time with a shield, and it made it a whole lot easier, but some of his attacks you can't actually block with a shield, so yeah, even like some of the best strategies against bosses are defeated by Messmer the Impaler. You get a really cool weapon that you can throw with an R2 attack, so Messmer the Impaler is pretty awesome. I really like this fight overall. Next, we have Needle Knight Leda and allies. This, I guess it could be much harder if you have... like, if you have multiple fighting... Like, I fought her, Dryleaf Dane, and another person. I can't even remember who it was, but Freya. I fought 3 of them, and it was literally so easy. Also, if you have Ansbach there, he can side with you and help out, which is cool. So, I really like his questline and the dialogue that he has and everything about Ansbach. But Needle Knight, Leda, and the rest of them, kind of a pushover. I beat them on first attempt. It didn't even really take long. Next, we got Promised Consort Radahn. Easy S tier. Yeah, this fight is a pretty tough one, I'll be honest. It's a fun fight though. The reason it's so difficult is it's a health pool sponge. Like, it has so much health. Using Scarlet Rod is a good way to bring down his health alongside Frostbite and Bleed. So I use the Anspur Rapier with a Bleed infusement to give Scarlet Rod and Bleed, and then I switched to the Cross Naginata with Frostbite and Bleed on it. It took a while. It took many attempts, but I finally beat it, and I had to use a shield too. So it's one of the few bosses that made me completely switch up my build to be able to beat it. And yeah, for that, Promised Consort Radahn, easily the hardest boss in this game, I would say, even harder than Millennia. The thing with Millennia is she's really hard if you don't cheese her, but it's so easy to break her posture. However, Promised Consort Radahn doesn't really have posture breaks that much. His attacks are really flashy and can drop your frame rates really quickly. So, very challenging fight. You can also get Miquella's Rune from the Scadutree Avatar. It'll free you from the grab attack. If you get grabbed twice, it's game over, but you can circumvent that with that. So, yeah. Finally, we got Curse You, Bayle, with a hail of harpoons. I would say Bayle, really challenging fight, but also the most spectacle fight. I loved the Bayle the Dread fight. I would say it's probably top of the A tier. I might even put it in the S tier just to put some respect on Bayle the Dread. It was a really tough fight. Egon is the one that makes this a lot easier because the way he's yelling at Bayle. Also, Egon had like no legs when you find him, and the pure amount of hatred that he has for Bayle allowed him to climb up the mountain and fight him with you. So that itself is really cool. Everything about the Bayle fight is awesome, but it is a pretty challenging one because it's a dragon. Now, one thing that I found worked really well is using the talisman that reduces fire and lightning damage, because it deals both damage types. So that helped me a lot. It might help you too if you're struggling with this boss, but yeah, this could go A tier, but I'm going to put it in the S tier just because it was it was actually quite a challenging. I think it took me, in terms of attempts, Promised Consort Radahn the most, second most Commander Gaius, Messmer the Impaler next, and then Bayle just a little bit after Messmer. So yeah, that's what I think of the hardest bosses, the most difficult bosses in Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. Feel free to leave a comment below with your experiences, because everyone plays through these games differently, and maybe your boss order was different from mine, but that's what I think. Feel free to leave a comment with your thoughts. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.